In the heart of Africa, where rivers whisper secrets and the wind carries stories older than memory, there lived a poor village, girl mocked, mistreated, and betrayed by her stepmother. One fateful evening, the woman she trusted most pushed her into the rushing river, believing the current would swallow her forever. But the river had other plans. Instead of death, the girl found herself face to face with a 100-year-old pregnant mermaid, her silver scales glowing like moonlight, her white hair flowing like the sun on water. The mermaid carried not just life within her, but the weight of centuries of treasure, curses, and untold magic. Saving this mystical being would change the girl's destiny forever. But when she returned 20 years later, she wasn't just a survivor, she was a storm, ready to bring justice. If you love mysterious African folktales filled with betrayal, magic, and revenge, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss the next story. Share this with someone who loves tales that feel older than time itself, helps the channel grow, and it keeps our storytelling alive. The sun was falling low that evening, painting the African sky in fire red and gold. The drums of the village had grown silent, and smoke curled slowly from mud huts as women cooked the night's meal. But in one small homestead at the river's edge, a different story was unfolding, one that would not be forgotten for generations. A poor girl, thin from hunger yet still carrying the quiet grace of her late father's bloodline, followed her stepmother down a narrow path. The woman's voice was sweet, too sweet, as she said, "Come, child, help me fetch water before the stars rise." But her eyes told another story. They burned with envy, with the kind of bitterness only a jealous heart can hold. The girl, innocent and trusting, obeyed. She carried the clay pot in her small hands, unaware that every step was leading her closer to the edge of fate. At the riverbank, the water rushed with the strength of the rainy season. It churned and foamed as though it knew what was about to happen. The stepmother's voice lowered, sharp as a blade. "Everything your father left should have been mine. You, spoiled child, are nothing but a shadow standing in my way." Before the girl could speak, strong hands shoved her forward. The world tilted. She fell. The last thing she saw was the wicked woman's face twisted in triumph, framed against the burning sky. The river swallowed her whole. Cold water filled her lungs. She fought, kicking, reaching for the surface, but the current dragged her deeper. The roar of the river grew louder, drowning her screams. Darkness pressed in, heavy and endless. And then, silence. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer alone. There, beneath the rushing water, glowed a figure both terrifying and beautiful. A mermaid's scales shimmering like molten silver, her hair long and white as river foam. Her belly was swollen with child, and her eyes held the sadness of 100 years. The girl trembled. She thought she was dead. But the mermaid's voice entered her mind like a song carried on the wind. "Child of sorrow, you have been cast into the river of death, yet the river has chosen to give you life. Do not fear me. I am heavy with child, but my strength has waned. Save me, and you shall not only live, but you shall inherit treasures beyond imagination." With what little strength remained, the girl reached out. The mermaid guided her hand to a rock, pulling her toward a secret cavern beneath the riverbank. Inside, the girl collapsed, coughing water from her lungs. She looked up and saw piles of shells, coral, and strange glowing stones that shone brighter than fire. For 3 nights, she remained in the cavern. She nursed the weakened mermaid with river herbs, whispering prayers into the dark water. On the 3rd night, the mermaid gave birth to twin daughters, creatures of light and beauty, their cries echoing like flutes. Grateful. The mermaid pressed a shell into the girl's hand. It pulsed with warmth, as if alive. "Hide yourself from the world," she said. "Let the wicked believe you are gone. When 20 seasons have passed, return. This shell will guide you, and with it, the river's treasure will be yours. But more than treasure, will carry the power of justice, with a final glow." The mermaid and her children slipped back into the river's depths, vanishing into legend. The girl, reborn by water and magic, stumbled into a nearby fishing village. An old couple found her shivering on the shore and took her in. To them she gave no name, for her old life was buried beneath the river. They called her Ijiro, the child who journeys. Years passed, Ijiro grew strong. She learned to mend nets, to row boats against fierce tides, to live humbly, but with wisdom. But in the stillness of night, she would clutch the glowing shell and remember the stepmother's face, the shove, the betrayal, and deep inside her heart, the fire of revenge smoldered. For 20 years, she lived in the shadow of the river, waiting, preparing, and listening. Until one day, the current whispered again, "It is time." 20 years had passed. The village girl who had once been thrown into the river was no longer weak, no longer afraid. She had become a woman forged by hardship, sharpened by patience, and guarded by the memory of the mermaid's promise. Her stepmother, however, had changed in another way. Wealth had made her greedy. Power had made her proud. She lived in a grand house, dressed in fine cloth, throwing feasts while the poor begged at her gate. To the world, she was a widow who had lost her husband and stepdaughter tragically. But to the river and to fate, she was a murderer who thought her crime had been forgotten. One rainy evening, the village gathered at the market square. They had heard rumors of a stranger returning a woman carrying a shell that glowed like fire in the dark. And when Agiro stepped forward, the crowd gasped. Her scars told stories, her eyes held storms, and her presence silenced even the boldest tongue. The stepmother sneered when she saw her. "Who are you to stand before me?" she demanded. Idro held up the shell. Its light burst across the square, casting shadows on every corner. Gasps rippled through the people as the truth became clear. The girl who was once pushed into the river was alive. She had returned not empty-handed, but with the blessing of the ancient mermaid. The stepmother trembled, but her pride chained her tongue. "This is trickery," she spat. "The dead do not walk among the living." But then the shell pulsed again, and water rose from the ground like living hands. It circled Agiro, shimmering with the same silver glow as the mermaid's scales. The crowd fell to their knees in awe. Agiro's voice was steady, calm, but sharp. "You tried to drown me, but the river kept me. You tried to erase me, but the ancestors remembered. For 20 years I waited not for your wealth, not for your food, but for this day of truth." The stepmother collapsed, her wickedness exposed. The villagers who had once pitied her false grief now turned away in disgust. No one raised a hand to protect her. She was alone, stripped bare by justice. That night, Ijiro led the villagers to the riverbank. She lowered the shell into the water. The river roared as though it had been waiting. From its depths rose baskets of gold, ivory, and jewels, glistening like stars. The treasure of the mermaid, promised 2 decades ago, was now given freely. But Ijiro did not keep it for herself. Instead, she shared it with the village that had sheltered her. She built schools for children, filled granaries with food, and healed the land her stepmother had poisoned with greed. As for the wicked woman, some say, she fled into the forest, where her cries still echo. Others whisper that the river claimed her, dragging her into the same waters she once used for betrayal. But one truth remained unshaken. The girl who had been cast into death had risen into life. And her revenge was not destruction, it was justice. And so the tale spread across villages, told by firelight, carried on the wind. The wicked stepmother pushed her into the river. But 20 years later, the river itself carried her back. With the power of justice and the treasure of the mermaid. Outro approx. 130 words. And that, my friends, is the story of the poor girl, the wicked stepmother, and the 100-year-old mermaid whose blessing turned tragedy into triumph. This tale is more than revenge, a reminder that time, patience, and truth will always reveal what lies hidden. Evil may celebrate for a season, but justice never sleeps. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments what part struck you the most. Was it the betrayal, the mermaid's promise, or the girl's return? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves deep, mysterious African folktales. Together, we'll keep these timeless stories alive for generations to come. Until next time, remember, rivers carry secrets, but they also carry justice.